Hello everybody. I'm going to introduce myself just because we're restarting the video. My name is Anissa Sheely. I am one of the community engagement editors here at 14 East Magazine. I'm so excited for everybody to be here, and I'm so grateful for everyone for coming out. We've got a really great artist here with us tonight, Isaiah Easter, who's a photographer. And we have just such an excellent just discussion ahead of us, especially when considering photography as an extension of like everything, as an extension of art and of everything that's occurred in the past year or so, with photography being like the way that the world has experienced a lot of these uprisings and protests and such. So I will, without further ado, introduce our guest speaker tonight. So Isaiah Easter is an artist, photographer, and director based in Chicago. A DePaul alum, he has worked with organizations like Chicago Votes and the Urban Football League, capturing stories both still and in motion of those looking to make change in their communities. Currently, he works as a project manager at the storytelling platform and media company Gumbo Media. A firm believer in challenging oppressive systems and institutions through education and creativity, he hopes that his work can aid in expanding the ways we create art to serve and uplift marginalized communities. That is an excellent bio, and I'm so excited to speak with you tonight. Isaiah, welcome. We are so glad to have you in the newsroom today. So, where are you currently located in Chicago?
I'm currently in Little Village, here out west in Chicago. Yeah, I just got here actually. I haven't been living here for in August. In August, that's when I signed the lease. So yeah.
Are you from Chicago originally?
I'm not. I'm from the south suburbs, specifically South Holland, Illinois. I've been out here for like 5 years, and I've been connected to Chicago via family, etc. For my whole life. So it's been exciting to actually be out here, born out here, raised in the suburbs.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So, Isaiah, what communities drive your art?
Um, Growing up, I was, I had a lot of diverse friends kind of growing up and in my grammar school years. And then when I was in high school, a lot of that flipped and I didn't really have a lot of outlets per se. So I think having that stark contrast of like going into high school and feeling more marginalized in my own experience. Um, a lot of my art was very personal in terms of describing how I was, um, you know, living adolescence as a Black youth, and how that wasn't mirrored in my environment. So a lot of my work started just out of trying to share Black stories, and then from there, it began to understand that power in art and creativity, as I said in my bio, but just searching for other marginalized communities who want their stories told too.
Awesome. So, what made you choose photography as a form of expression, and how has that shaped the way that you see the world?
um I don't know that I really chose photography per se. I think that in many ways photography made sense, and in terms of the times, like Instagram came out when we were like or when people of my like age group were like in our youth. So I think a lot of people just started taking photos, and then a lot of folks, for them it was more about their lifestyle or whatever what have you. And for me, I just really resonated with folks who are out here really trying to work and do photography as a craft and as a medium. And um, I was always into film and cinema in that way, and so they really served similar purposes for me, just depending on like what the story or the message I was trying to tell, or just the image that I was trying to capture. So what stuck out to me about photography, though, in terms of the craft itself and why it's stuck, I think there's just so much joy that I think that comes to me when I'm looking at a very balanced, colorful, or striking photo, something that moves you as a still image and kind of a slice of time. If it's documentary work per se, I think that's super powerful to me. I think um, for me, and then using this craft, it started to just snowball as into like the usages of it. So first it's you want to create a cool image, but now it's about telling someone else's story, and then from there it's about influencing a message and getting a word out about something that's urgent in the community. So it's evolved over time for me, and I think it's going to continue to grow for me too.
I really love that. Growth is essential, especially when considering art and the way that art changes over time. So, my next question for you is, who are your photographic role models? Like, any notable photographers that have really inspired you and the way that you view photography, as well as like the images that you go on to capture?
Yeah, definitely. People definitely inspire me. I wouldn't say that I have any photographic like role models per se, because how I approach art is very much not like directly like, oh, I see a photo I'm like inspired by, then I go for it. Like sometimes the concept comes from like a different medium. So it's not necessarily very linear. All that to say that there are some dope people working now that are super inspirational to me. Um, you know, just when I see their work, posted on socials and stuff. Lauren Tony, great photographer based in Chicago right now. Please follow her for sure. Joshua Kissy is someone who's been super big and doing a lot of kind of like large sports photography stuff right now. He just did a shoot with Kaepernick, and he did something with Gumbo actually recently too, in Nike Chicago, which was super dope. Dion Ivory, her work is cool. Sorry, I'm just like listing names. If folks are taking stuff down, like definitely do. These people are like super raw. Um, her photography is so soft and like um, it's very approachable and very human, and I really appreciate that. For where she was a super big inspiration to me when I started to really want to like hone my own craft a little bit more a few years ago. So those are some off the top of my head for sure. But yeah, there's a lot of inspiration, definitely.
Awesome. So describe your last year as an artist, and how did 2020 and the pandemic really shape the things you've decided to create since then?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's definitely changed everything for me, like for sure. Like, yeah, I don't think I'll think of art creation like the same again because 2020 was just so wild for everybody and myself included. During the pandemic, we all had an opportunity to really sit with ourselves, without really our approval per se, but to figure out, what was next for us after, all the fallout and a ton of tragedy, unfortunately. But then also, the summer happened with a ton of uprising and people having way more consciousness to an issue that for Black people, we had known the whole time. But there is a movement and a wave of like folks who are just focused on listening, and folks who are becoming aware to issues that they hadn't been before. And I think for me, it solidified the urgency in the work that I was already wanting to do. It was saying like, yo, like just because it's difficult or because like this is a lifetime worth of work, specifically, working in nonprofits or working with marginalized communities, doing ground swelling work. There is really no trajectory in terms of like profitability or like career pathways that look really glamorous and glitzy for folks. So it is just saying to myself that like like I'm definitely going to take these steps. I'm going to be patient with it, and that's okay. I guess that's some more of the philosophy is like how I went about it. But like the actual artwork itself, I think there was more attention to detail and attention to the message that I'm trying to give off, right? Like having my audience in mind, making sure that I'm being attentive to what they don't know. I'm trying to uplift the message of whoever the subject is. with care and compassion, without my own agenda attached to it. Because I think that that can be a very tricky thing that people don't look out for in themselves when in this field. So I'm learning, mostly just learning.
I love that answer. It is always important to consider yourself a student, no matter how far advanced you think you are in a field, because you never know when somebody knows more than you and when somebody can offer you knowledge. So I really, really appreciate that perspective. So this question is a little bit more fun. So what has been your or what stories do you hope to tell through photography?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I will say I want, it's kind of like just me thinking like out loud right now. Like there's a lot of I have a lot of desire to like take more photos of like people who are excuse me, sorry, I'm blanking on my train of thought, but specifically obviously taking photos in the Black community, uplifting folks who are doing great work right now, similar to some work I have done with the Urban Football League, for example, just like a community org who are just like, yo, let's, play football together. Let's, or soccer for those not as internationally aware. But yeah, like I just think that that was super dope to have the opportunity to come out and shoot for them. Um, because it's just like this is just something that people are doing for their own sense of joy. I think that that's super powerful for us to be able to showcase. As I'm sure many of us have heard so much more these days, and I think we should keep up talking about what it means to be in joy and in community with one another. But also, I would say I feel like there isn't enough talk about folks who are living with a disability, and I think that there needs to be a lot more like just media and like content push for folks who like are experiencing living with disability. So that like I don't really have any agenda right now in terms of what that'll look like for me, but I have like a lot of like heart and I want to start becoming a student of like that lived experience so I can capture that appropriately. Or if it's not even me, just like advocating for those who are doing work already. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely excellent, especially considering the disability angle, because that is something that a lot of people don't think about because we're also wrapped up in our own little bubbles that we don't consider those who may not have the same abilities as us, physically or mentally. So what has been your favorite set of photographs that you've taken? And on the flip side of that, which ones have like moved you the most?
Um, I'd say one of my favorite sets, and I'll pull it up too, just so that folks can see if uh if that's okay.
Oh yeah, that's totally fine.
But one of my favorite sets, and I don't, it switches from time to time which ones was like really feeling. But this is from my hometown. It's a Memorial Day parade um that I used to go to all the time growing up. It would just happen on like one of the main streets of the town. And so these are some photos that I took covering that event when I used to work at for my township. I used to take photos and do some other like media content for them. And so these are some of my favorite like of those. I just think it captured like the scene very well and what it felt like to be in South Holland, which is just like, this small cute town of some diverse people. And so yeah, this is just scrolling through a couple of them. I felt like, you know, um, you like I felt very seen in terms of having grown up here and loving this community and feeling like, okay, like I know what type of people these are. Like I've walked past them all the time. Whether I was going to school or these type of people would like, I don't know, work the small businesses, um, or be in organizations within the community. So to be able to capture that was pretty special for me, just because it meant so much to my childhood, like truthfully. So Yeah, here's just some of them. I don't know if I'm going too fast for folks, but another really kind of impactful one was just recently, like what I was mentioning with the Urban Football League, which was so cool because yeah, like I've had grew up playing soccer, playing football, like with friends, like um both in school and out of school. And so knowing that I had met Maxwell, the director, the key organizer for the Urban Football League, I had met him in college at DePaul. And so the fact that he had, you know, started this org where people were just meeting to kick it around on a flat top, like I just thought that was so dope and inspiring. And I, just asked him, I was like, yo, can I, or no, he asked me, yeah. He said, yo, can you just come out and take photos? And I was like, yeah, like, of course, like that's not gonna happen. Like that has to happen. So here's someone that I really loved. I just felt like um, if I captured what it felt like to be there and how magical it feels on those Sunday mornings, seeing the guys out there just um, being competitive and having fun just with each other. So yeah, I really appreciated having the opportunity. Yeah,
These photos are amazing.
thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, this is just a gallery I had put together. Um, I'll link it somewhere in the chat so folks can see it on their own too if they want to. But yeah, these are some of my favorites. But it like I said, it rotates, it changes. Um, yeah. And then I guess I will just throw it in here just because we're in the business of sharing. When I'm not doing like organization stuff or stuff around like direct actions or things of that nature, because honestly it takes um well, I mean, not the Urban Football League type stuff, but sometimes when you're doing things that involve very timely and urgent causes, they also can weigh on you sometimes. So um some of my other photography work is more street work in my personal time, and this is just a photo set that was more like contemporary kind of work that I was excited about, since we're talking about some photo sets. So this is the last thing I'll show. So this is just some stuff from the South Loop, right next to the History Museum, Art History Museum. Can't remember where it is. That I just really liked. So I thought I'd show. So yeah. Um, well, that's enough of that.
Thank you so much for sharing with everyone. If you would like to drop those links in the chat as well so people can become more familiar with your work, I would definitely love that. And I'm sure everyone would love to see more of what you've done. Um, so my next question is, what do you most hope to capture on film?
um, I just want to capture authenticity for the sake of like not a lot of it. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're talking about what's going on in like people's everyday media consumption, it's just not a lot of actual stories and not a lot of real shit. So it's just kind of annoying that that's kind of like the most of our consumption. So if we can like partner like um meaningful stories and entertainment, because I don't think that entertainment is inherently negative, um or things that um, give us some type of distraction or ease. I don't think that those things are necessarily negative. If we influence them with authenticity and we bake in like messages that are allowing us to be progressive and allowing us to shift the culture of values and understanding one another, and I think that we're doing a good job in terms of how we're approaching the lens. So for me, like I just said, like Right now, my head's in like, how are we uplifting the voices of people living with disabilities? Because it's like, growing up, didn't have a lot of perspective from folks who were living with disabilities. I didn't like it didn't seem like that was really something that mattered. In terms of the common consciousness of like my culture that I was growing up, and I would argue most people's. So unless you were directly affected. So yeah, authenticity is a huge thing for me, and integrity as how I'm approaching the lens, because the other tough part here is just folks using the medium for their own like notoriety and their own, and I'm like very wary of that. Um, because it can be, there can be abuse of power for sure. So especially for folks who are like documenting real work and organizing work on the ground, there can be definitely a disconnect between the subjects and the person behind the lens.
Awesome. So, do you have any advice for any people looking to get into photography?
Absolutely. Just start shooting. I think that that's the most cliche advice you can get, but like do that for sure. So that's step one. Step two is to like throw away like thinking about getting, the perfect photo like every time. I feel like that anxiety can stop you from stuff. So it's important to like give yourself self space to create garbage, and then like that's okay, like just that's for you, and you're just not gonna be flawless at anything, and that's totally fine. um and like celebrate your wins too. Just be like, yo, I really like this photo. Sit on it, feel it out, like critique yourself, so that you can become better and know what you want to do next time. um and the last thing I would say, that's really practical advice, is like really understand lighting, like start to really get a good understanding of how light is. Like if you're really a beginner right now, like one of the best things you can do is grab like a friend, grab a homie, be like, yo, I have this light source, and just move it around their face. Just see how you feel with the different shadows and shapes that are cast on their face, the ways that their face are being shaped by the light, and just how you're feeling innately. First off, like you can go into like light theory and talk about people saying like this is going to give this effect, and this is going to make you feel this type of way, whether it's happy, sad, etc. The person's going to look menacing or uplifting, etc. Like those are great jumping off points, but the real trial comes from just like saying, hey, I'm going to step up and just shoot, and you learn a lot just being hands on. So I'd say that's a good tip if you're going to take anything. I know that we're doing questions, so maybe there's other things I could say, but I won't overwhelm.
Yeah, so we're gonna take a brief 2 minute break so that everybody can think of some questions, and then we're gonna do an audience Q&A. So if you need to use the bathroom, get some water, just stretch your legs. We're gonna take a couple minutes and then get back to it.
That's good.
All right, everybody, just take one last minute and then we'll get right back to it. Okay, everybody, we are back. Um, so you can, if you want to put your question in the chat, you can put it in the chat and I can read it out loud, or you can just raise your hand and volunteer it. You don't have to turn your camera on at all. Um, but yeah, so I have one question in the chat so far, and it is from Martha, and it's, do you ever feel like at times you might miss something because you're lost in the focus of the lens? I find sometimes I put my camera down because the moment I want to live in personally, like I'm actually boxed into it.
Um, I definitely understood the first part of the question. I'm curious to hear like, what do you mean by that boxed in to the lens? If you have a chance to elaborate, because I just want to answer that correct if I can.
Martha, if you want to just elaborate on that a little bit.
She, they might be typing in the chat. But I'll answer the first part for sure. Like I can capture everything that's being expressed. Yeah, absolutely. I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah. Break it down in your head. Like, first of all, you're not gonna capture everything. Like you just have to let that go for sure. Because moments are going to happen and they're going to be missed. But a lot of times, what you're capturing is the essence of something. You're giving a picture for someone. Similarly, like, I'm not sure if you've dealt in film, but like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on the cutting table. Like, that is good content. Like, I just finished a documentary this past spring, and like, it was ended up, the runtime ended up being like an hour long, and we had four and a half hours worth of like footage from people. So um that's from a position of motion, but a position of stills as well. Like you're not going to capture everything. So for me, I am segmenting like things I know I want to get a well rounded you know documentation of the experience. So if I'm like at an event or something, I'm wanting to get I'm wanting to know who are the key subjects in that I want to pay attention to. For me, I'm very much influenced by cinema, so I'm trying to think of close-ups or think of wide shots so I can get a good perspective of both the scene itself, but also some intimate moments within that as well. And I'm a lot of times give myself like a number, a quota, like I want to get at least a couple of these type shots, like three good, like, um, what's the word? Goodness, lost my train of thought again. But exterior shots or like um man, I apologize, Martha, but getting three like wide shots for folks is definitely something that is like on my brain, probably going straight into an event. And then make sure I'm looking out for the moments and just being very like um discerning about how I'm gonna switch my focus up. Um and lastly, putting my camera down. Like a lot of times I just want to sit in the space and like see what's happening. Cause if I'm too eager to like run the shutter, I'm going to miss a lot based on my focus being in the wrong space. So I think I'm patient with myself. I'm like, hey, I don't have to get 15 banger photos in the first like 15 minutes for me to feel validated and that knowing that this is gonna go well. I'm hitting my marks of like, oh, I know I can get an exterior shot, or I know I can get a good wide shot. Okay, great. Got that off. Like I'm having some momentum, some motivation. And then next, let's look for a subject that's doing XYZ, or how are people already experiencing the space? How do I want to capture that in one photo so that I don't feel like I have to capture every moment within that time? But I don't ramble, so I hope that helped. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Claire, I see you with your hand raised, and then Grace, I'll get to you next.
Yeah, Isaiah, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today. This conversation has been really enlightening. I'm learning a lot, and your perspective is great. I don't think you need to apologize for rambling. Like everything you say, I'm just so engaged in. So yeah, just thank you so much for your time. My question is, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, but when did you really begin actively pursuing photography as a career, something that you can make income off of? And what steps did you take to break into that field and make it, a source of income versus like a hobby?
Great question. Really good question. I mean, there are a ton of avenues that you can do. I think now is the time of ever for photographers, and I think that that gets a little dicey there because at the same time you're having people who like minimize what being a photographer is, being that it's super accessible, everyone has a phone, etc. But at the same time, so many businesses and organizations, or access to said businesses or organizations, where you can get connected into the field of your interest. So what I would suggest for folks is to find an interest outside of just photography itself and what your subjects are. So right now I just completed a sports photography fellowship with Gumbo. Um, um, Gumbo Media's sister company, partnered, powered by Nike Chicago, and they were specifically, targeted towards uplifting people of color, specifically to get more into the realm of sports photography. People in Chicago right now who are doing sports photography, it's like a handful of people, right? And we're seeing a ton of work needed. If you are an individual who really liked UFC or like MMA fighting, you could find yourself saying, I want to go to this gym, offer to take photos for XYZ, and then you could build your portfolio around that and follow an avenue towards somewhere of your interest. That's a great way to like, again, curate some photos to be able to prompt yourself as such. So I would always say like work is gonna precede like the pay, unfortunately. But also fortunately, because it is giving you an opportunity to hone your craft and do what you want without like having a lot of oversight and like control as into the creative, because that ends up happening too when you're making this a career. Sometimes you're taking photos of things that you're not necessarily the most excited about or the most eager to take. So it's definitely you have to weigh kind of like the pros and cons when you're going into this as a field. I personally am not at a position where like photography is like giving me a livable income whatsoever. That's not necessarily my trajectory in terms of photography personally anyways. Like photography is like very much for documentation and community organizing chiefly for me. And if that comes with like a check like that, that's dope when it's feasible. But that's just my avenue, right? So if you're wanting to get into commercial work, etc., like go do with models, go like, find your friend who is having this clothing brand and shoot photos for them. Like do work that you like. Like I know all the things that I position myself as like to advocate for jobs or to like get somebody's attention was always like work that I made myself. Like I just was like, I want to shoot these photos, so I'm gonna do it. And then I put that work in my portfolio, and then people were cool. So you don't have to always use paid work to get paid work. So shoot, like definitely just like shoot stuff, and then put yourself in a position to advocate for yourself for sure.
That's really interesting. Thank you for taking the time to answer that.
No problem.
Am I next, Anissa? Does that work?
You are, Grace.
Awesome.
We also have a question in the chat after that.
Yeah, thank you so much for again, sharing all this wisdom with us. It definitely was that. I guess, and you know, as writers, we always talk about getting writer's block and like having these creative blocks. So I guess my question is for you, and all of the different mediums you work with, but specifically photography. Like, have you experienced creative blocks? And when you did, like, how do you move around those? How do you work through them?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in a creative block right now, to be honest. Like I'm not taking as many photos as I have. I think that's influenced by the weather chiefly right now for me. Like I just haven't felt like going outside. So it's like, who am I gonna take photos of? Um, and then also like again, like the work that I'm doing sometimes it's just very draining and taxing on my mental and you know, you have ebbs and flows and in personal life, etc. So you have to take a step back and almost recreate the momentum for which like you want to make art. I think that the things that got me inspired and the things that got me in wanting to make photography and wanting to shoot were different before than they are now. Like before was, hey, I have this idea and this image that I can't get out of my head and I want to create that and I want to explore what this meaning might be, etc. Right? If it has a concept to it. But then like later on, it could be, hey, I just like have a homie who, needs some photos for his hat brand or something like that. And that work that I'm doing in my approach to the work then inspires me to create more. So trying to put myself in a position to be inspired. And that isn't like strenuous work though. Like that isn't me like saying like I have to like come up with the next thing like right now. It's more saying like what do I enjoy right now that is creatively fulfilling? Like, okay, let's go, thrift shopping and like, grab some random cool clothes and maybe that's inspiring, or maybe let's just hang out and smoke by the lake or something like that. I don't know, like just like whatever it is to give you uh a stepping stone into yourself, into your like innate creativity, into your innate kind of like I. Um, and I think Chicago in particular, we have the advantage of there's so much culture and there's so much to inspire you. And I feel like, to kind of like get on myself, you just got to step outside and go ahead and experience that. So go out of your community, go out of your neighborhood and go ahead and just honor someone else's, uh, give to a small business, which you're um, eating at a restaurant or something like that. Like just have new experiences. New experiences inspire new work.
Awesome. Are there any more raised hands? No questions are in the chat. Okay. So from Julian, he says, I saw your Instagram, new follower, that you've paired some of your photos with original poems. How do these two mediums inform each other for you personally? What can words do that images can't, and vice versa, and how can they work together?
Yeah, I love this question. This is very beautiful, in your insight towards it. And I wouldn't say that I did that intentionally per se either. Different mediums speak to each other for me at different times for different reasons. So pairing photography with poems, I think is fun because in a word or in a line is an image, and in an image there's a million words you can use as descriptors. So they have like there's a highway back and forth into how they interact. One of my favorite things I learned in high school, in a English class I had I think my senior year, was the idea of intertextuality, which if you're not familiar with the term, it's just the idea that different books and writing can speak to each other, and it doesn't necessarily depend on intention or depend on the time it was written. Something that was written in 1960 can have amazing relevance today to someone who writes maybe a poem now, right? And how that conversation lives on beyond just on the page. And I think that that is something that can go beyond and it can transcend mediums. You can find that through, imagery and poems, and how maybe for someone, how a poem may not have connected in one way, but the color, given in an image and the softness therein can give someone the feeling that the words couldn't describe. And now the words have more meaning, the words have more resonance. And then that can happen in vice versa, right? In another way where someone's words give power to an image. I think there are some great campaigns that do very well would have like very tagline phrases and really powerful copy to, really bolster like some attention and some resonance within the audience of those who are viewing the image. So I'm starting to write more, which is super exciting. I've been jotting down some poems and stuff, so I'm excited to explore this more for myself. So thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Personally, I'm a poet. That's like what I'm doing and what I want to keep doing. And that's awesome. That was a really great answer. Spent some time obsessed with the whole intertextuality concept too. But yeah, I'd love to read more of your poems.
Thank you. I'd like to read yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that excellent response. And so our last question from the audience is coming from Lily. And Lily says she loved the colors in the Urban Football League photo set. And the color palette can really communicate the mood of a scene. What tips do you have for developing an eye for color, either when you shoot photos in real time or edit in post?
Yeah, I definitely spend some time in post for sure. But it's definitely influenced by what I'm seeing in the moment. In there, I kind of have like a good idea for how I want it to feel. There's something angelic about the Urban Football League photo set. Like the pavement isn't actually that green or that vibrant per se. I'm very much those were digital photos, but I'm influenced by film and I shoot some film here too. And so just warmth is something that I'm always attracted to in a lot of my photos. How I'm approaching color though is just with grace, like just like impatience to like the scene, like not forcing a photo per se. Like if I see some colors aligning, I will take that extra step to like throw out something that is kind of distracting the frame, or being still with the camera so I'm not so I can get the frame that I want rather than just kind of like grabbing something that's interesting within it. So just paying attention to the whole frame and how the colors like play with each other. Having a good knowledge of color theory, I think, is super helpful. Like if you played with pigment in paint, I think that that's really helpful to know like what type of attention that color can give you, and then also the moods and the feelings that coexist within that too. So like as much as the one piece of advice like I can give for anyone is like, if you like an art form and you want to be better at that craft, like we're like start enjoying in a hobbyist way something else like completely different, and see how that like just gives you new ways to think about the craft that you are trying to grow in. Yeah.
Claire, did you raise your hand on purpose?
Yeah, my follow-up question goes right off of what you just said, is advice for photographers or for people who are starting to try and break into the field, or people who are just pursuing a hobby. What advice would you have for those types of people?
Do street photography. If you're gonna be a photographer, try to go out with your camera, and it could just be your phone, and just do street photography because it's so unpredictable. You learn a lot, I think, really quickly. I think it can be overwhelming. So don't force yourself again to like feel like I have to create the best street photos I've ever seen. But the way that a street photographer kind of approaches photography, and because things can be very fast moving, how you have to show up, being patient and having a steadfast kind of like confidence in yourself is very it propels you into that. So I would definitely suggest doing that or trying it out. Not to say that you have to like it or anything like that, but I think the learnings are helpful. And again, just find a friend, start learning, light and shadow as it pertains to someone's face in the human form and in general. I think that's very helpful since a lot of times people are capturing people. And yeah, just shoot. Like, stop getting in your head. You got to shoot more.
And just a quick follow-up off of that, not to take up too much of your time, but so when you say like go out and do street photography, this might be hard to explain to someone who is not as, hasn't really developed an eye for it, but how do you pick like a muse when you're out there? What catches your eye, or what do you decide this is what I want to photograph if you don't have something initially in mind when you're going out with your camera?
It's a good question. This, it's a good follow-up because I definitely it can be super overwhelming. Like I've done more street photography in the last few years, just personally, and some work that isn't even like for like public facing. Some of which I like and some of which I absolutely abhor. Because it's just like you don't really know what you're getting into. And I think this is where it's really not even about the photo or like the actual like thing you get, and just about like the philosophy that you're approaching it in. Like you're like just saying, hey, I don't know what's there. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to be capturing. So you can come in with an idea of saying like I want to stand on this intersection or I want to get this whatever, but go ahead and like just experience the space, find something that catches your eye, like not trying to capture everything, like saying like, oh, this building is dope. Period. Let me see like how I can frame this up in an interesting way. And just take that time for that. We're saying this intersection is an interesting scene. Let me just sit here for like 5 minutes and see if something or some subject that's inspiring or something comes into frame, and take that time. Like, yeah, give yourself like so much like patience and grace. Like do not be pressed to do too much. I'll say a couple more things on street photography. One on photography generally. Because of Instagram and because of the way we take photos a lot of times, there's just like the reward, the relationship to reward for each photo you get is really messed up. Because like a dope photo is a great piece of art. Like one is a great piece of art. Like you don't have to have, a whole like 250 batch of photos to deliver some event and be like, yo, I did a good job per se. Like, especially when you're learning. So just like, be like, yo, I did this photo cool. What about it did I like? Is it the balance of the frame? Is it how they, are stacked in the photo? Is it the color here? Is there something I would have changed or would have framed differently if I had more time, or if I would have taken a second longer? Because then when I do step out again, and this will roll into my second point, I will have more confidence in some of the particulars that I'm trying to capture in a photo. So I have more confidence in like my attention to color. I'll be like, yo, I see this orange thing and I know like across the color wheel green is, okay, so there's this green thing in the frame too. Let me see how they play off each other. Cool. Oh, they're all secondary colors. So there's a purple thing, a person with a purple jacket who just came into frame or is coming down the street. Let me actually retake that photo because it could even be stronger. Like those are things that I'm having in my mind, for folks as well. And sorry, the last thing I'll say, and this is honestly the biggest takeaway in terms of practical advice outside of the lighting comment, which I think those are all helpful too. But like studying composition is like key, because this composition and a frame just it feels balanced and like feels or purposely unbalanced is going to give you so much power in how someone feels when they first like look at your photo. Like it matters more than almost your subject, maybe equally, if not if not, I'd say just behind is color, but definitely composition for sure. Because it's just like if you're being smart with how you are placing your subjects in the frame or placing your scene at large, and allowing the eye to gracefully, go across the page in some way that's very pleasing, and having a taste for that comes with time. Just I would say look at photography, look at stuff that you like, and figure out why that is. But composition is key. Like it's definitely like the main thing I think photography should focus on, for sure.
Thank you so much for that. I know like it can be kind of hard, or for me at least, to articulate those kinds of things. So thank you so much for taking the time to break that down for me.
Of course. Thanks for the question.
Are there any last minute questions before we start to wrap things up?
Yeah, I think I have one last one. This is a super subjective question, but when you're shooting, I mean, how do you know when you're like, that's a good photo? Do you ever like in the moment, like take a photo and you're like, yeah, that was it? Or do you normally look at it all like when you're developing it after? Is there any like in the moment feeling or, kind of moment where you're like, that was a good ass shot?
Yeah, there are definitely those times. You'll definitely have those times where you're just like, oh yeah, I'm feeling this. Like I'm really messing with this. A lot of times that comes when you're having the most fun in the moment though, too. Like it's like most fun, I'll be broader with that term, but just when you're really immersed, right? Let's say that much, because sometimes fun isn't necessarily the emotion I'd attribute to it, but definitely when I'm really in it and immersed into the moment, I think that that's true. And a lot of times, again, that comes from composition. Like if I know I just like had the entire frame, I'll say, I'll just show a couple examples real quick, just because, that happened a few times with the Urban Football League stuff. I was just like, yeah, these are exciting. Like these are dope, I think. And also like sit in that, like don't even care where you're gonna show them, who's gonna like it, whatever. Just be like, yo, I created something I liked. That's cool. Like, why else are you doing it? So I'd say like these three in these top corners. So this one here, like once I took it, I was like, this photo's one of my favorite photos I've ever taken. Just because I feel like they're just really balanced in the frame. It's the colors in this are just so vibrant to me and exciting. So I was really happy with this. And then let's see. Sorry, and then this one as well. It just felt very clean to me. It felt like there was a story here, whether it was, the story or not, just for folks to kind of feel and reminisce and relate to what it's like to be sidelined at a pickup game. And then this one here was so cool because I just had the luckiest of shutter times having this ball land right here within the square, and then also like have him really well placed within the frame. Like just being excited about using the skills and stuff like that you have, and the stuff that you start to pay attention to. You're like, oh, I do have the power to create, with attention to detail and with attention to end product. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
No, I did. It did. Thank you.
If that is the last question, anybody else?
Can I have one kind of follow up real quick?
Okay.
if we're interested in purchasing your art, can we just go to your website, or would you like us to, hit you up directly?
I am not selling any prints of photography right now. That's something I hope to start doing in like 2022. So if y'all want to follow me on my Instagram, I'll definitely be, or my Twitter. I post a lot of street photography stuff there, since it doesn't work well with the algorithms. So yeah, you can follow me on stuff. Isaiah Easter _ everywhere. Yeah. Shout out to me.
If that's the last question, thank you so much to everybody for attending, and especially thank you so much to Isaiah for taking time out of his, I'm sure, very busy schedule to sit here and have this conversation with us. And I appreciate everybody for contributing your energy tonight.
I'm
And
not that important.
you will be able to find this recording on YouTube if you ever want to come back to anything that was said here. It'll be on the 14 East page. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming out tonight, and I hope that you enjoyed yourself, and I hope to see you at our next public newsroom, which will be in Winter Quarter. Bye.